The fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD is one of the most remembered episodes in world history. What was once the greatest power ever seen, with armies that dominated 3 continents and an administration that seemed indestructible, eventually crumbled under internal crises, political corruption, and a series of barbarian invasions that weakened its defenses. However, what many people forget is that part of this same empire managed to survive. Not only did it endure, but it thrived for nearly another 1,000 years. We are talking about the Byzantine Empire, and here comes the big question. How did the Byzantines manage to keep Rome's legacy alive when the West collapsed? To understand this extraordinary achievement, we need to go back to the moment when the Roman Empire was divided. In the year 285, Emperor Diocletian realized that ruling such a vast territory was nearly impossible for a single authority. His solution was to split the empire into 2 parts, the west, centered in Rome, and the east, which would later have Constantinople as its capital. What started as a practical administrative measure became permanent in 395 after the death of Emperor Theodosius II. From that point on, the 2 halves followed completely different paths. The Western Roman Empire, with its economy based on rural activities and a vast, vulnerable territory, faced constant attacks from Germanic tribes, along with an economic crisis that eroded its foundation. The eastern half, which would later be called the Byzantine Empire, held a privileged geographic position, wealthy cities, and a much stronger urban economy. And this brings us to the greatest strength of the Byzantines, their capital, Constantinople, founded in 330 by Emperor Constantine I. Constantinople was no random creation. It was built on a peninsula naturally protected by the sea on 3 sides, which already made invasions difficult. But its only vulnerable land side was reinforced with one of the most impressive engineering works in history, the Theodosian walls. Erected in the 5th century, these walls were not ordinary fortifications. They were a triple system. First, a deep moat, then an outer wall, and finally a massive inner wall, up to 12 meters thick and 15 meters high. They were so effective that, throughout history, they withstood more than 20 major sieges. In Tyre, peoples Avars, Bulgars, Rus, Arabs tried to conquer Constantinople and failed. Chroniclers like Procopius recorded how these defenses turned the city into an almost impregnable fortress. But Constantinople was not only a military bastion, it was also a vital center of trade. Located between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, it controlled key routes that connected Europe and Asia. This commercial control brought immense wealth to the empire. While the West was collapsing with its rural economy, the East thrived with vibrant trade and prosperous cities. Another fundamental pillar was the Byzantine currency, the solid gold bezant. Unlike Western coins, which lost their value during crises, the bezant remained stable for over 700 years. This consistency allowed the empire to fund professional armies, build fleets, maintain its walls, and most importantly, finance its diplomacy. And here lies another secret to Byzantine survival: diplomacy as a weapon. Instead of relying solely on war, the Byzantines knew how to use cunning. They often paid tributes, offered bribes, or manipulated rival peoples into fighting one another. It was common to turn enemies into temporary allies and later unleash them against bigger threats. The British historian Sir Stephen Runciman once said that the Byzantines believed the world could be manipulated into destroying itself, and this was reflected in how they conducted foreign policy. Meanwhile, in the West, the emperor's authority was constantly challenged by the Pope, creating endless tensions. In the East, the situation was entirely different. The Byzantine emperor was seen as God's direct representative on earth, embodying both religious and political power. This system, known as Caesaropapism, gave the ruler supreme and unquestionable authority, ensuring stability and avoiding the internal disputes that weakened Rome. The Orthodox Church, subordinated to the emperor, was essentially an extension of the state. The ruler could even appoint the Patriarch of Constantinople, further strengthening this unity between church and government. This gave the empire an institutional stability that never existed in the West. Another element that must not be overlooked was the efficiency of Byzantine bureaucracy. Highly trained officials ensured the collection of taxes, the organization of provinces, and the smooth functioning of the empire. This administration was so advanced that Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitus even wrote the famous manual De Administrando Imperio, which detailed guidelines on diplomacy and governance. On the military front, the Byzantines relied not only on numbers but also on innovation. One of the most iconic examples was Greek fire, a secret incendiary weapon that burned even on water. This invention was decisive in naval battles, such as during the Arab siege of 717, when the Byzantine fleet, using this weapon, destroyed its enemies and saved Constantinople. In addition, military treatises such as the Strategicon demonstrated that the empire valued strategy and intelligence just as much as brute force. This balance between military science and innovation guaranteed survival in critical moments. Therefore, the combination of all these factors, a nearly impregnable capital, a stable currency, skillful diplomacy, centralized government, and creative military power, explains why the Byzantine Empire survived while the West fell. While the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476, the Byzantines endured until 1453, when Constantinople, weakened and diminished, finally fell to the Ottomans, led by Sultan Mehmed II. The Byzantine story shows that it was not just luck, but a combination of strategic vision, political stability, and adaptability that ensured its longevity. And now I want to know your opinion. Which of these factors do you think was the most important for Byzantine survival? Was it the walls, the economy, the army, or diplomacy? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.